His parting comment as I got in the car was, "Call me tonight to tell me how Angela takes it." Now, don't you worry, he said, "You're a survivor and you'll get by." That's all he could say after all that I'd done for him and the company, and especially him and his wife personally. You see, I'd always believed in working hard, putting a company first and climbing the ladder of success. What I didn't know until getting in this business is that companies love things and use people. But in this business, we love people and use things. We'd put all our eggs in one basket, and we took it for granted that nothing would ever change. Do you take things for granted? We did. We never planned for the unexpected and found our ladder leaning against the wrong wall. Now, while driving home, I was thinking of calling it a day, as I just about had enough. I felt a total failure, but my subconscious kept telling me, "Don't be a fool." My subconscious kept saying, "Look, you'll win through." His words, "You're a survivor," really started to get at me. But I recall Bill O'Brien, one of our upline diamonds in the USA, saying, "It's not how many times that you get knocked down, but how many times that you get up that counts. And winners never quit, and quitters never win." Well, I wasn't quitting. I can't really explain how I felt, except my mind was racing away, thinking about how much effort I'd put into that company, the property that he had committed us to, and Angela expecting our second child in 6 weeks. It really was quite a bad dream, and it was real. I really didn't know quite how to cope with it all, and it was something I thought would never ever happen to us, but only happen to other people. I started to get mad, but what could I do? I was on the verge of giving up in the game of life, but I didn't. Never give up on life's challenges. Out of every adversity, there is a seed of greater or equivalent benefit. Now, looking back, I was stupid not to have realised that the writing was on the wall for the company and that they were experiencing financial difficulties. I was a little naive. If only the boss had have told us of the company's situation, we could have avoided buying our second house. Anyway, we accepted the situation, although not a brilliant one to be in. And the year ended on a high note with the birth of our second son, Matthew, which brought some cheer to our Christmas. My brother Gary was representing us to take legal action against the company and felt confident that we'd come out with all that we were owed, which was quite a sum. We didn't, and we lost a lot of money, compounding our property situation further. The Building Society were not happy and said they would deduct £1,000 per month due to against the bridging loan from our equity in the house if payments weren't made. Well, it was obvious we couldn't make the payments, so we accepted the situation. On top of this, house prices were falling rapidly, and our equity was reducing at quite a rate too. Anyway, I got back into work in the new year, and my brother Gary called to bring me up to date on our legal proceedings. I then told him that I'd seen a great opportunity and that he should look at it too. Now, Gary's response was to say a little unexpected. He asked me what type of opportunity was it. It was almost as if he knew what I was talking about. I then went on to say, "Look, Steve, don't get involved. You could get your fingers burnt. And trust me." I thought, well, being a legal executive would be probably the right advice, so I took it. However, his reaction afterwards could have bowled me over with a feather, as he then said he's got a brilliant opportunity that we needed to look at. I was far more reliable and ideally suited for both of us, and was sending us some information in the post. It arrived, but I never opened it, and it stayed in our hall for several weeks. He called me several weeks later after I put him off about discussing the ad pack. His posture was good. He said, "Look, I'm passing by your house at the weekend with a few business colleagues. We're going to a business seminar in Torquay, and I'd like to pass by and pick up my information," to which I said fine. He also asked, would we mind if he stopped by for a cup of tea and also meet his associates? Now, thinking nothing of it, I said, yeah, fine. I thought, well, if they're legal associates, they may be coming over to discuss our case a little further. Well, to some degree, the legal bit is true, as I learnt later, although they weren't visiting us in a legal capacity. They arrived late Sunday afternoon, and I must admit, I thought they'd all been on something. Now, Gary introduced a very smart and professional-looking couple, Mike and Caroline Price. Now, I'd like you to listen very carefully to what happened next. Gary proceeded to explain to me that they were involved in their own networking business, and they would like to run through it with us before I made any hasty decisions on the other plans that I had. They also told me they would like to run through some of the facts, and if I was interested in getting more information, I was to meet them at their home at Suffolk. I thought to myself, who's kidding who? I'm doing them the favour looking at this. After some polite conversation, Mike said, "Let's sit at the table and I'll run through the business." He took out a grey booklet presenting the opportunity from his case and read it word for word. letting me look at the circles and pointing to the incomes as he progressed. I thought, this looks a cinch, and kept interrupting him with what would happen next. Angela kept chipping in, saying, it sounds like pyramid selling. Now, to my knowledge, pyramid selling was something to do with tour packages to Egypt. After Caroline and Mike left, I arranged to take the children and Angela the following weekend to her mother's. Well, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. I said I was meeting Gary for a chat and would see them later. I drove to Mike and Caroline's and signed us both up, as Angela said, in the business, and I was determined to make a success of it. Well, here's how we got going. I made a list of names as advised, but never listened to the tape making the list. I started to realise that most of our friends were living abroad, and we didn't know anyone locally. Our upline advised the importance of listening to tapes on the list like Persist Through the List and Contacting as Learnable. They said that these tapes would help us learn about meeting new people, adding them to our list. It didn't mean that we were to thrust an ad pack at them, but gradually get to know them, build a relationship and cultivate an interest with them first, then hit them with the ad pack. Well, our list wasn't too bad, except we didn't have any telephone numbers. We'd lost contact with our old friends from college and my previous jobs in Colchester and Clacton, having been abroad for 10 years. Having just moved to Twyford and not even knowing anyone or the neighbours wasn't easy either. Anyway, I started to contact and invite, and the results left us staggered. I was staggered at the rate of no's and the rejection. I'd had enough. Now, looking back, the no's were a result of not listening to the contacting and inviting tape properly or even using the ad pack correctly. I thought my ability from the corporate background that I had would help. It didn't. I was trying to explain this business on the telephone. That was like trying to give somebody a haircut through the post. The first few plans went reasonably well, and I did manage to get some people to attend, and it's something I do recommend you do too. I made contacts from umpiring hockey matches in the area, plus some people through work associations. When the first few plans went reasonably well, and when I finished, I didn't exactly help the situation though. I would start to try and sell it to the prospects afterwards. Our upline told me that I'd just undone everything, and that the hard sell had probably put them off. I eventually started to listen and took a tape from nature, that my ears weren't made to shut, but my mouth was. I realised that the quicker I learnt to let my upline control the situation, the better things would be. We found two very close friends from the Middle East lived nearby. They were the perfect prospects for the business, or so we thought. I invited them. Now, I apologised for the I, but it was only me at the time that was involved. Well, only one of them turned up. They didn't want to know, as they were too busy with other commitments. Now, I was a little disappointed, to say the least, as I was so sure that they were the ideal candidates for this business. But Angela said, you can't want this business for people more than you want it for yourselves. Well, that really destroyed me, and it kept giving me a dose of negative, and I started to threaten to quit. Why, I don't know, as we really didn't know what else we could do to ease our financial worries. Our upline asked me, are you listening to tape of the week? Are you reading every day? The answer was, well, yes, I am. But I wasn't listening to the tapes and doing what they were telling me to do. I was becoming a little bit selective in my listening. What could a tape tell me that my corporate background couldn't help with? My corporate past really did get in the way, and let me tell you just how stupid I really was. I called upline having listened to the advice to listen to the tapes, read the Pattern for Success, and Presenting the Opportunity booklet. I told them how I could improve the typography of the booklets, how to make them more reader-friendly, to add some colour to the pages, to put some nice pictures on the cover, to add a nice colour tape jacket to the ad pack, heat seal it to give it an overall professional image. Well, my upline said, look, it's worked for many people the way it is, so why change it? They went on to tell me that it would have cost a fortune to change, and it would have alienated the business to many people. Now, looking back, I must have appeared a little bit of a know-it-all. You see, I never got past page 1 of the Pattern for Success. It's your blueprint in this business, and so important to read it at least once a week, as it contains everything you need to know and do to build this business. If only I had turned to the top of page 2, where the final paragraph concluded, why reinvent the wheel? Why did I? You see, I had a bad case of status and was stubborn at not wanting to take advice from a younger brother or upline, who hadn't been in the corporate world as far as I was concerned. I was also afraid to let go of past egos and just learn to have faith and follow the system as it was. If it could work for Pat and Greta Gregory and Jerry Mandy Scriven and the other UK leaders, it could work for us. I know that my upline thought I was a real pain, and we both thanked them for their patience in standing by us. I listened to tapes and finally read The Pattern for Success and plugged into the system. Now things started to make sense and fall in place. I then realised that everything was done for a reason. Now, did you notice I didn't talk much about reading? I couldn't get into reading. However, The Magic of Thinking Big was just a little bit too much for me, as it highlighted all my faults. But it's still a good book. I was that negative person, always pulling people down, never seeing the good in others, and always saying yes to everything, and finally getting bogged down because I didn't know how to say no, always trying to please everyone, making promises, trying to be Mr. Nice Guy. I had to change, and I gradually did. I got into reading, and Mission Success did it for me. It was a brilliant story by Ugg Mandino and about his days in the US Air Force, serving in England during the Second World War. The reading started to develop into a habit, including reading Book of the Month. I took notes at functions and read them when I got home so I could reflect on the things that I'd learnt to help us move this business on. Angela also agreed to attend some of the planned trainings, provided I gave her enough notice in order to arrange a babysitter. Things were looking better. However, our personal lives unfortunately took another turn for the worst. I lost my job again. And on top of that, we still hadn't got anyone in after 3 months. We persevered and made contact with some expat friends from East Anglia, telling them that we had this really exciting business opportunity and we felt sure that they would be interested in it. I said I'd send them some information, an ad pack, and would arrange to speak to them the next day. Well, after the callback, I met them at the 40 Post House in Ipswich for an open plan training. They were excited and wanted to know more. So my upline and I arranged to meet for a follow-up 2 days later in Lowestoft. They got in. I started to feel a lot happier. Our upline also agreed to support the distance group in view of our financial difficulties and said that they would get things moving, but I would at some point have to take the responsibility and share in helping work that group too. We did. At last, 1 in, 42 no's. Although it appeared that I was back on track, I still couldn't resist the temptation to do my own thing. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear a confession that no one's ever heard upline. I was trying to bring my corporate skills and design hat to the business, and I had some stationery designs and a corporate identity drawn up. I wanted to create a neater impression until I saw my logo. The letterhead design had Stephen Harvey International Traders supported by a logo. Wait for it. Now visualize this. A circle divided into 4 quarters with the initial letters from the letterhead, S-H-I-T. Well, you can imagine my reaction too. I finally got my calling cards through the organisation and settled for something quite simple. Remember this, you can't plan your future by the past. You need to be prepared to have a willingness to change. That message finally got through to me when I listened to one of my favourite tapes by Dexter and Bertie Yeager in Attitude Makes a Difference, when he said that success is a question of attitude in anything, and added to that by saying that successful people who get into this business don't often apply common sense, because common sense isn't always common. That was me. At the end of May, we hit the first level on the bonus chart and received cards which really made us feel quite special. Our first leg started to grow, and we went on the following month to 6%, although all the PV was coming from that leg, and I was not too happy, although it was a turning point in our business. With Angela agreeing to handle orders, she started to take note on how the volume was starting to build, and that we only needed to do our 140 towards building the volume 2. Her enthusiasm really did start to make the difference, and we started to build the business together. We invited our closest friends over for dinner to celebrate our anniversary, June the 21st, that significant date, but never mentioned the business to them all evening. However, they did notice a change in Angela's attitude, which they found strange knowing our personal situations. They asked if the business was doing well, and Angela told them it was great, even though we only had one leg. We never told them that, because as far as we were concerned, the business was still working. We just needed to find a few more people. Well, family reunion was approaching, and I was still out of work, and our upline kept reminding us of the importance of why we needed to go. We didn't have the money, but Angela said, look, you go. Well, I was on the verge of quitting at that point, and really couldn't be bothered with it all, and told my brother we'd had enough. My brother Gary did something that was to prevent me from making a disastrous decision. He sent me an old tape of the week, The Biggest Kid on the Block by Bubba and Sandy Pratt. After hearing how they struggled as a couple before the business and were heavily in debt, and with their youngest son in hospital, he said he could never quit. He said his son deserved the best. He was right. We both thanked Gary for sending us that tape, as it enabled us to focus on why we got in the business. We'd promised our 2 children, Jason and Matthew, that we would build this business and in addition take them to Disneyland. And remember this, children don't forget, and they still remind us today, and we will be going. I went to family reunion on my own and didn't promote to any of the group the importance of attending that function, as I'd been using the excuse that if we couldn't afford it, there was no point in telling them to go. Now, looking back, that was really stupid. That function had the biggest impact on me, and we are so grateful to our upline for stressing the importance of attending all functions. The speakers were our upline diamonds, Jerry and Polly Hartice from the US and Tommy and Brenda Orr. Their stories and their teaching were so valuable. By sheer fluke, I personally met Jerry Hartice that weekend as he walked in the NEC arena and talked to him briefly while Mike Cash, then our upline Ruby Direct, stood there as an escort, although Mike didn't even know me at the time. Someone close by took a picture of me talking with Jerry and sent it to us, capturing a moment in our lives which we'll always remember and was a turning point for me in the business. Don't make excuses like us about not having money. Yes, we know what it's like to be in debt, but what's going to change? We had to change and do whatever it took to build this business. Mike Jakubik said on a recent tape of the week, if you want to make some changes in your life, you have to make some changes in your life. We did. We made some changes and stopped negotiating the price. And the following month, we hit the 9% level. The second leg we sponsored was a story in itself, and I'd like to run through how that happened. I hadn't shown the plan at all, despite having been in the business for 5 months. Although I had got a board and easel sitting under the stairs. Does that sound familiar, guys? I made contact with a chap through umpiring hockey and dropped off an ad pack to him. And much to my surprise, he said he was interested. Now I was in trouble, as I knew I'd have to now show the plan. I was so nervous and edgy all day, but Angela said I'd be great, and it was a great boost to hear her giving me that moral support. Well, I arrived to find he had a babysitter, and that his wife was at work. The babysitter said he was interested too, so I proceeded to explain the opportunity to them from some index cards. We sat in the kitchen while a dog barked all evening, and one of his children came downstairs frequently poorly, asking for his dad. I said, look, it'd be better if I came back later and explained it to you and your wife later, but he said no. I got home at 11:45 that night. Angela was sitting up waiting, looking really worried, saying, where have you been? I said, showing the plan. She said, yes, I know, but not on a marathon. He only lives 2 miles away. I explained what had happened and told her that we had got a follow-up booked. I was so thrilled as I'd finally got over the nerves and taken control of our business. Things were really starting to move on. If anything's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly at first. Although my plan wasn't brilliant, they still got in this business. Was it worth feeling the fear and doing it anyway? You bet. That leg qualified us for Pearl. Now, that experience taught me a lesson. It doesn't matter what circumstances are like. You will never get the ideal situation to present this business to anyone, but do it anyway. I don't recommend waiting 5 months to take control of your business. When we took the reins, we knew then that this was our business. That was when our second leg started to grow, and that's when we both got excited. Our third leg was a result of a get-together we had with our closest friends back in June, who had seen the business 6 months earlier. However, while watching us and noticing the difference in Angela's attitude, decided that this business was for them. The business was growing due to us both working as a team. Angela and I kept in constant contact upline. We started to understand why we needed to attend the monthly functions together. It wasn't just for the association of listening to others and seeing success, but we needed to learn as to what we needed to do to go direct. I was also showing the plan at that point 3 times a week. We also promoted to everyone downline, but never took it for granted that they would be promoting too. Our leaders have all said on numerous occasions, this business will work for 100% of the people who follow the system 100% of the time. We got committed 100% to this business and 100% to following the system and took full responsibility for our own business. Now, 2 books which helped to the success in our business was Body Language, and it enabled me to identify positive people at plans, which I was doing, while the other was Skills of People. As you may recall, I tried talking them in after the plan and getting aggressive at times to the point where it wasn't feel, felt, found, but feel, felt, thump.